So is a fake or rep or reproduction Kobe 4 Protro as good or as well built as an original Kobe 4? Let's get into it. Now, I've gotten a lot of requests to review Kobe reps or reproductions, and I've largely stayed away from it. But a year ago, when I got invited to Turkey for my hair, which, yeah, it's been a year, I can't believe that, they took me to a market there, one of the Turkish markets there in Istanbul, and they said, we got someone that you need to talk to. It's gonna be really interesting for you. I'm thinking, all right. So I go into this sneaker store, said, okay, on this wall here, wall number 1, these are the number 1 fakes. These are ones that basically just bear a resemblance to the real ones, right? You could tell it's like the Air Jordan one where his hand's going the wrong way. The second wall, he said, these are fakes that are made of better materials, right? They still, if you look at them close enough, it's still kind of off. He said, but the materials are okay and they'll last you a decent amount of time. On the third wall, which is where these Dior Jordan 1s were, he said, the only difference between these shoes and the ones that you'll get on the actual flagship website is the factory that they are made in. He said everything else about them is the exact same. And he said the older the shoe that it is, the better the fake usually can get, because the materials have been around for longer, you know, that it's been perfected, people kind of know how to make them. Now I asked them about more, more recent shoes. I said, as the performance shoes get newer, is it easier to or harder to reproduce those? He said, well, the materials are simpler. Nowadays it's basically plastics. He said when they're brand new and the technology is brand new, obviously it's very hard to recreate that. He said, but given a year or two, it's pretty easy to reproduce the shoe just because material science has gotten so good. And my business partner, Noah, who I'm actually working on the sandal with, which will be out soon in its actual colorways, not just the prototype colorway, but he is working on a shoe as well, and he's talked to a lot of his project managers. And when he goes and sees a lot of the materials that are available, he said, you have hundreds of options of just one plastic, hundreds of options of carbon fiber, right? There's just so much choice now, and there's so many materials out there you can mix and match that it is getting easier and easier to reproduce even very, very recent performance shoes. So fast forward to now, instead of doing a review on the Kobe 4 Protro, why don't I see how good this reproduction is? Turns out it's really, really, really good, except for just some very minute details that, actually might come back to bite you later. So I think it's really interesting to see how well these perform, especially versus some more current Kobes that are real. So number 1, starting off in the uppers of these reps, like I said, there are different levels, and it's hard to tell which ones you get if they're gonna be any good or not. Starting off in the tongue here, the same thing on the rep versus the original Kobe 4. As you look, the tongue has this whiskered padding on it that is super thick and plush, and you can find it on both shoes. They both feel incredibly plush, incredibly comfortable, and the tongue on this breathes incredibly well. That padding and backing is the exact same on the reps as well as the original, and even on the breathability test, get this, the reps heated up 105.5 degrees, the original's 105.7, almost exactly the same. Same with the breathability mapping, fog really only getting out of the tongue, because in the forefoot, there's just pretty solid backing. But overall, fascinating that both of them were exactly the same, much like most of the other Nike Kobe models. They just don't want to heat up all that much, and that's largely because of the tongue. The interesting thing is you can see that the cabling on the Kobe 4 rep looks exactly the same as the Kobe 4, the original. The interesting thing is on the microscope, the cables are actually closer to the surface on the original, so you can see the actual threads of the cables, versus on the rep where there's a lot more backing on it, right? There's a lot more of that waxy layer, so it obscures the cable on it. So although they look the same, and in terms of containment they feel the same, you can see more detail in the Nike one versus the rep, where, like I said, it's kind of just, it's polished over a little bit more. Now, is that to make it so you can't see what's underneath of it and it is not the exact material? And if you cut open that cabling, like I said, just a lot thicker of a backing on the reps versus on the, the originals. And, under the microscope, they do look pretty similar. It's hard to tell exactly, is it the same type of thread or is it just dyed? It's kind of hard to tell, but the containment on the reps versus, the original or just the regular Protro, still pretty similar. So even if it is a different type of cabling, at least in the short term, it does accomplish the exact same goal. Now look at this thing on the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. I mean, same thing. I mean, the burr kind of pummels through this, but on the Kobe 4s, it's gonna pummel through this anyway. This is just a little bit more of an upper drag guard. Like I said, these are meant for indoor courts. So honestly, dragging or sliding, at least on this pair, probably should be just fine. The only thing that I would be concerned about with the reproduction is you don't know how good the glue job is gonna be from one to the other. You might get some premature separation. That's what I'd be more looking at. But once again, it's hard to tell one from the other, right? So it's gonna be factory dependent, person dependent. So that's where the reputation of the maker of these shoes really comes into play. And just a word on the external heel counter of the 4 Protro Rep versus the original. Not only is it the exact same shape with these undulations on it, but the internal heel counter is the same really super straight internal heel counter versus the original. Some of them are a little bit more swooped, right? Have a little bit more molding in them to kind of keep you in the shoe a little more, just be a little bit more anatomic to the back of your heel bone, your calcaneus. These two are both very straight, which I thought was interesting. So I thought if it's going to be a different shoe, maybe they'd just go and just, use a more just current, generic last in the heel. No, it is a straight up and down internal heel counter with the same shaped external heel counter as well. Now getting in the midsole teardown, this is where it really becomes interesting. There is an air unit in the Rep. I'm not going to call it a Zoom Air unit because it is not Zoom Air, but it is a reproduction of it. You look at the original and it's that real chunky Zoom Air unit in there. It's one of the more large fibered Zoom Air units in the back, whereas this one, looks like it's kind of halfway between one of the really small kind of thin Zoom Air units, but then it's trying to be as big as the chunky Zoom Air units. You can kind of see where it has aspects of one type of Zoom Air, and then it's got the volume of some of these bigger ones. So it's just kind of a makeshift air unit. Now, what I thought was the craziest part of this, which you kind of need the microscope to see, is yes, there is carbon fiber on the Rep, which I thought was really cool. But on the original, there's just a lot more carbon fiber. Remember, carbon fiber is fibers, right? You can go on a microscope, you can see the little fibers of it, right? The little shards. They get in my hand all the time when I cut the shoe open. And these ones in the Reps, there was no shards, there was no nothing, right? They're on here. I actually just cut one in my finger from touching this one. But on this one, you can see, there's nothing. The reason for that is because it's mostly glue and resin. So it's just a cheaper version of carbon fiber, right? Not all carbon fiber is the same. So it looks like carbon fiber, right? And opening it up, you can see it, to the naked eye, it's carbon fiber. But on microscope, what you're mainly seeing is glue, just the resin holding it together. Now, when the shoe is new, is it gonna matter very much? No, it's a bottom-loaded shank. So it doesn't matter all that much, no. But over time, this is gonna crack and it's gonna get brittle a lot sooner than the original will. And it's gonna not have the performance that the original will. Now, like I said, it is a bottom-loaded, very thin carbon fiber shank. And honestly, a plastic shank that's in this configuration, it's probably gonna deliver right around the same performance. The carbon fiber is to keep the shoe lighter. And like I said, the carbon fiber on both of them, in the original and in the Rep, is so thin that in terms of performance, I don't see a huge difference. It's just that over time, like I said, this glue, especially hot, cold, like I said, it's just gonna crack or get brittle a lot faster versus this, which is a much higher concentration of carbon fiber, which is much more premium carbon fiber. Interestingly enough, though, on the bounce height test, that air unit in the back did get 38 centimeters of bounce height. That's similar to Zoom Air units. Usually Zoom Air, it's somewhere between anywhere 36, 37 on the very, very low end, when it's like kind of around or it's bottom loaded, kind of in sandwich and react or something like that, all the way up into like 45, 46 territory when it's combined with like Zoom X foam, or it's top loaded, it's a thinner unit, right? It's a smaller unit, it's concentrated. The shock isn't being dispersed around a larger surface area Zoom unit. Now on the forefoot though, the Reps got 32 centimeters of bounce height. Now usually Phylon is somewhere between, it usually gets around 34 centimeters of bounce height. Cushlon 3.0 gets, I'd say around that 36, almost like 38 centimeter bounce height. React usually around 30, 32. So this is kind of on the end of more of a Phylon type foam, right? A little bit more of a deadened Phylon. And honestly, on foot, it feels like this pretty dense Phylon. Honestly, underfoot, it feels like the Vapor Pro 2 or the Nike Vapor 11. So Is it bad? No. Is it, a premium quote unquote Protro foam? No. But getting into the outsole tread on both of them, it is just this herringbone pattern that does have these kind of jut outs of straight linear treads. That's also where the shoe's break points are, right where the metatarsal heads want to bend. I found interesting that the reps and as well as the originals both have a pretty standard, bend at the metatarsal head. So it's not crushing, it's not bending here in the midfoot of the shoe, which some reps that are made a little bit cheaper, they just kind of squish in the middle of the shoe. What I thought was interesting was the originals came in with a durometer of 17.5. The reps came in at 17. Now these are also much older shoes than these, which have just been made. But it's interesting to see that the durometer was right there. On the outsole durability test on the reps, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, about 1 millimeter of damage on these things, which you would expect. They are more indoor shoes. What I found fascinating though is look at the grip test ramp, they don't slip till 39 degrees, which is actually starting to get into the higher reaches of that test. And on court, these had way better grip than the Kobe 9 Protros that I just reviewed. They were just as good as the Kobe 8 Protros. They were good as the Kobe 6s that I've had. The grip on these was just fine. So to me, because this rubber has been around for a while, I don't think it's that much of a stretch to think that they can get the exact same rubber compound as that they were getting on the Kobe 4 Protros that are being produced now, as well as the older Kobe 4s. But in terms of the overall performance of the Kobe 4 rep, I really enjoyed playing in them. They had enough snap to them. That's going to change over time when that glue starts to wear down, and that just shows you also that sometimes different materials can do the job of others. Like I said, this is just resin in there, gluing it together, and it worked just fine. Like I said though, over time that's not going to be the case. But in terms of a super nimble shoe, very, very side to side stable while not being a very heavy shoe. The Kobe 4, like I said, Kobe 4 Protro is fantastic. And these reps, honestly, initially for the, I'd say 3 or 4 times I played in them, to me felt just as good. It's just that, honestly, still to me, you got to be careful with buying reproductions. I just stumbled into these, right? This video I kind of stumbled into. If it's me, I'm still going for the authenticity guarantee, put it that way. Ask the question, would I buy Kobe reps again? Probably not. Just because I've seen other reps and they're terrible, right? And I've seen those, all the different walls, right? And do you really know which one you are getting if you're not getting it from the original manufacturer? And speaking of different levels of carbon fiber, if you look at this piece, you might recognize it from the Jordan 12. However, this is a piece from a fake Jordan 12. It's painted to look like carbon fiber, but it is just a flimsy little piece of like rubbery TPU. So this is the kind of levels you can get, right? From just something painted to look like carbon fiber to less actual, concentration of carbon fiber, all the way to the real thing, which is kind of like industry standard carbon fiber. I know it's really frustrating with Nike and trying to get Kobe's because I'm trying to buy them too, right? If I don't get them, then I don't have a video to make a lot of the times when Nike releases a shoe. So I'm just as frustrated as everybody else out there that's trying to buy them. And so, yeah, I would love to have alternatives, but at least for me, just for peace of mind and for consistency, I'd probably just still be buying them from Nike. No, Nike did not pay me to say that. No, I'm not a shill for Nike. I just did an entire video on how good the rep of this was. So no, this is not an advertisement for Nike. But it just, to me, being as neurotic as I can be sometimes, I would just want to know that, even this one, how good it is and how good it performs. Hey, you know what? In the future, this shank is going to start to crack, right? And that glue is going to start to wear down. So even the good ones, right, might have an issue with them. Yeah, even the original Nikes have problems, right, with glue separation, things like that. Sometimes you have batches that are bad, so you're never 100% guaranteed, but the odds are in your favor more just buying from the original. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially if you do have Kobe reps, if you do have reproductions, and what your experience has been with them. It's been interesting to see, the 2 fakes that I have actually been pretty good. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you do want to see what I'm talking about with the real Kobe 9 and the issues that I had with those, and I think the issues that a lot of players are going to have with them if you're taking them on, if you're actually taking them on court to play with them, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.